Good afternoon and welcome to today's session on the 5 pillars of effective marketing. My name's Gemma and I'm part of the marketing team here at Practice Web. And we're going to share some of our things that we think you should be focusing on for your marketing plans for next year. Don't worry, it's not just me talking for this whole session. I do have a team of panellists to help me. To start off with though, let's just cover what we're going to look at. We're going to talk about content, search, brand, social and measurements. Okay, let's just introduce the team now. We've got Harry, Alice and Julie. Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hello, my name's Harry. I'm the search engine marketing specialist at Practice Web. Part of my role is to kind of spearhead clients' marketing campaigns through an SEO and paid search perspective to just help them grow a bit more online.
Hi Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice and I'm also at Practice Web. I head up the editorial team. So me and my team write, edit and create loads of different types of content across a lot of different formats. And although we're creating it for the accountants, they're actually designed to be read and consumed by the accountants' clients and their prospects as well. So we do lots of stuff from email newsletters to web pages and even some print stuff as well still.
Julie.
Hi Gemma, my name's Julie and I'm here from QuickBooks. My role is Partnership Marketing Manager, and what that means is I work alongside our accountants to make sure they've got everything they need to be successful from a marketing perspective.
And QuickBooks is also the sponsor of today's session, so it's really good to have you here.
Thank you.
So it's a great time to be talking about these things because people's attention are starting to look towards next year and getting their plans in place for 2018. And one of the biggest challenges we find accountancy firms are facing is trying to stand out online and differentiate themselves from their competitors because it's a crowded marketplace, isn't it? And that's something that brand can really help with. And when we talk about brand, we're really talking about reputation, aren't we? Have you got any tips and advice about how accountancy practice can do that, Julie?
Absolutely. I think times are changing, and if you look back quite a few years, it was very much about who do you use as an accountant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, he's around the corner, he's near to me, so then I'll use them at the same time. And what we find nowadays is 74% of consumers actually look online for any product or service that they're looking to aspire to.
Okay, so that means your website's a really important portal, isn't it then? It's kind of the window to your firm.
Definitely.
And first impressions really count, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
So where should we focus on a website then to get that impression across?
I think, again, if you think back to times when websites first came about, and I know the other day you and I were looking at Yahoo website.
Yes.
So it was very much kind of lots of different words, lots of different information, some ghastly colours on there, and not even any photos or anything like that. So things have to be very different and very kind of aspiring to people. Like you say, it's a window almost into your company. And if you're walking down a street and a shop front, the window is all ghastly and it was all not very nice, you wouldn't necessarily go into that store.
No.
So therefore, it's about making sure that your website is appealing to people and actually tells them about what you do. So the first thing that we say is really important is having a really strong About Us page. So
Yes.
actually, so the customers straight away can go on there, they can navigate around easily, but they can clearly see what it is you're offering. So for example, if you want to be known as an accountant practice that is a solution for cloud accounting, then make sure that's on your front page. And then in the About Us section, go into it in a little bit more information and tell them about the benefits they can bring. So not just we're an accountant practice, we've been here for 100 years. It's about, okay, you as my client, I will be able to bring this benefit to you. So for example, if you use cloud accounting software, we can save you X amount of time per month, and therefore you've got that time to go and do the nice things that you want to do. So a really strong About Us page is the first thing that we say.
And we would agree that when we look at the data across the practice websites that we look at, the About Us pages are some of the always the most viewed pages that you can see. So it's and sometimes you can see really standard copy on About Us page, can't you, Alice?
But you can, and that's not great. You know,
that makes us a bit sad when we see that.
Every firm is different, and even if your services you provide are similar to other firms, there's loads of things in there that do make you unique, and you're really missing an opportunity. If you're writing the same old stuff as your competitors and people around you, you're missing a trick to stand out already. And I think you also need to make sure that you are very, very consistent with the writing you're doing across your site. So it's making sure if you're capitalising something somewhere, you're capitalising it across the site, and you're making sure that there's no typos, everything's formatted nicely. It's all those little things that take a bit of time to do, but that kind of first impression stuff really does count.
Absolutely.
And really, it's about building that trust, isn't it? Because you need to trust the person that is going to deal with your accounts. You know, that's a really important big decision to make. How else can you demonstrate trust on and start building that on a website?
So I definitely say, and we've all heard the terminology that people buy people. So the second thing we would recommend is actually having an about the team page and having photos on there. I know a lot of us don't like having your photo, me included.
Nobody likes
the one
their
we're
own
using
picture.
today. I'm like, oh really? But I think again, it's about making sure your website is more personable, so that as a client, you go to that website, you can see, okay, this is the benefit they're going to bring to me. And actually, if I ring up or if I go into the office, this is one of the people that I'm going to speak to. So it's about instantly creating that rapport and creating that confidence in the service that you're delivering. So I definitely recommend having photos, as much as you don't like them, but of the team.
And I know I like to see the person I'm going to speak to when I pick up the phone.
Definitely.
It does make a difference.
And then I think stepping back, so you've kind of looked at, okay, what does the company do? What is the benefit they give? Who is it I'm going to be dealing with? And then the third thing is around accreditations. So if you've got any kind of badges or accreditations of anybody within your team, put them on your website. So for example, if you work with QuickBooks and you're part of our Pro Advisor program, there's an online portal in the software, and it can actually give you a badge to say, I'm a certified QuickBooks accountant. And therefore, as a consumer, you go on there and you can kind of link the reputation with the other companies that you see, and it just gives that strength behind your brand and your reputation.
Yes. So we've talked a lot about the kind of visuals of a website. Let's talk a little bit more about the words, Alice. I know you're very passionate about the words we use.
Words we use. So I think before you start diving in and creating some content or a video or a webinar or something like that, everyone has loads of great ideas and there's always loads of enthusiasm. But I think that's getting a little bit ahead of yourself, and it's good to rein it in and kind of go back to what your business goals are. What are you trying to achieve? It's that, why am I bothering to do this? Because creating content, it takes a long time. It can take a lot of money, kind of internally, sort of taking people away from the day job, externally if you get other people in. So you really need to have this really clear purpose in mind before you start. And actually, if you do that, when we come to talk about measuring it and measuring the success of things, if you've got that purpose that you can relate it back to, that kind of helps with absolutely everything else. So before you get started, look at your marketing plan, look at your business goals, what do we want to achieve, and then try and think about, can content help you achieve that goal as well?
And I think it's also about looking at what is happening in the industry at that time. You know, we all know, especially in accounting, you know, practices change, procedures change. You know, we were talking about making tax digital. One time it's on, then it's being delayed. So I think it's really important that, as well as having your kind of marketing plan, it's being able to pivot on that content and making sure that what is shown on your website or on your social is relevant for that time. There's nothing worse than going onto a website and thinking, well, this is really outdated. What impression does that give to a consumer? I know if that was me and I was looking on a website and something was kind of a few months old, you'd be like, actually no, they're not up to date, they're not up to speed with what's happening, I'll move on to someone else straight away. So it's about making sure that content is relevant and right for the time of whatever is happening in the industry.
So what you can do is, sometimes the other side of that is it can be quite hard to be a bit reactive if people have got their jobs as well. So the kind of way you can kind of go in the middle is, get a big spreadsheet out and do your planning for a quarter or a year or whatever you're comfortable with, and that can kind of get your sort of your bread and butter content. If you're doing, I don't know, if you want to do regular blogging, just get your spreadsheet there, get your topics that you want to cover, then nail down your people who you want to talk to and get them committed to writing their bit of content they're going to do. You can also put in there, what do you want to, if there's other bits of content you want to link to, you could probably put in some keywords in there, or any other bits, so you've got all your planning there, so you're not kind of scrabbling around every week or every month trying to get that new content, and that will give you a nice steady flow of new stuff going through. And then, as you say, when you get the big budget announcement or the government changes its mind on making tax digital again, you can then spring into action and do your extra bits as well.
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be content that you can repeat and you can tweak. And, you know, if you think about an accountant practice, if they're new, you know, the kind of things they want to talk about is the service they can offer. They want to be a thought leadership in a certain space. You know, they may want to help their clients move to the cloud. They're, like you say, generic topics, and you can utilise content, whether it be on your website, whether it be videos, whether it be showcasing products that you use. There's generic things you can talk about, like you say, but it's also making sure you are reactive to those big changes and making sure you've got somebody on hand to help deliver with you.
And sometimes you don't need to start from scratch either, do you?
Not
Because
at
there's
all.
probably like a wealth of content already in your firm that, you know, is really popular. Like it could be a presentation, it could be an old brochure, but it's really good to kind of like go back and look at each of those things and break it down and see how you can reuse it. Presentations become ebooks and white papers, they can become different blog sections. So, you know, it's worth having a little review, isn't it, to see what you can find.
Absolutely. I think one of the big barriers we hear is, I just don't have the time to do this.
Yeah.
But if you look around the office and kind of get everyone to share what they've got, you might be surprised about what you've already created.
And I think as well, when you're working with kind of different companies, so I know, for example, at QuickBooks, we've got our own blog posts. You know, if our accountants want to look on there and take that information off and utilise it, we have no problem with that. So exactly what you say, you don't have to sit there from scratch and think, I don't know what I'm writing about. What do I write about? It's actually look at, okay, what is trending at that time? Who's good at talking about it? And what can I take off what they're saying to put it into something for my own clients?
So some of these can be quite weighty topics, can't they? We're trying to talk about making tax digital. What kind of advice can you share for us, Alice, to kind of get that message across?
You really need to look at your language. I think you're absolutely right when you say there's meaty topics. They're very heavy, very dense, and I think you want to get it right. You don't want to mislead people, and you don't want to give the wrong impression. So it's really hard to be succinct and kind of get it all across in a limited space. You don't want to be writing War and Peace, do you? So it's such a challenge. And I think the way you can approach it is, first of all, looking at your language. And we're not saying dumbing it down here, because you don't want to kind of patronise people, but you've also got to be really aware that that technical knowledge and expertise that you have isn't necessarily shared by your reader.
Yeah, that's what they're coming to you for.
Absolutely. So I think it's really important that you think about what language are they familiar with. And the great news is you're probably doing this already when you're talking to people. So I always say, imagine you've got this sort of ideal client that you're writing for. Imagine they're sat opposite you and you're explaining making tax digital to them, and then write it down that way. And that should hopefully help you grade your language a little bit. So you can do that. The other big one is the jargon. And I think we're all used to it, and every industry has their jargon.
And we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of using jargon.
But it can be great. You've got this kind of shorthand that everyone understands. You're saying, you know, MTD, CGT, all these abbreviations everywhere. And it saves lots of time. We're all quite lazy. We don't want to say making tax digital when we can say MTD. So that's great. But as soon as you take it out of that context where everyone's familiar with that language, no one has a clue what you're on about.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make your readers feel stupid. That's not going to help anyone at all.
I think as well, we talk a lot now about an accountant not just being an accountant but being a trusted advisor. So it is making sure that if somebody is, you know, a small business is new to doing what they do, they're coming to you as an accountant for the answers. They don't know what those answers are, and if you sit there and you throw lots of different terminology at them, throw lots of different figures at them, it might not make sense. So I think I love the fact that you say, imagine you're having a conversation with somebody, because ideally that's what we're having. We're having conversations, whether it's written, whether it's face to face, and we've just got to simplify what we do.
I hope she's not watching, but I have the mum test. So if I write something and I think, have I been really jargony with this? I think, what would my mum think if I was reading this? Another good source of content, and it also links back to the brand, is testimonials, isn't it? And that kind of like building trust. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a saying, or there's a number around, if people have bad service, they tend to tell 7 people, and if they have good service, they only tend to tell 3. So I think it's really amplifying that 3. And if you've got a client, you know that you've kind of helped them move from A to B, or you've given them a good service and they really recognise that, ask them if you can have a testimonial. So it could just be a simple one-line quote.
Yeah.
It could be you have a picture of them, and put that on your website, put that in your content, and we'll talk a little bit more later around social. And again, it just amplifies that trust that somebody can have in you as an accountant, to show you're not just there to help them with their books or their tax or their compliance. It's actually you're helping them being a business advisor, and you're giving them over and above the service that they expect.
And it's really great if you can get them to demonstrate that the problem you've helped solve as well, not just Alice is lovely and it was really nice working with her, because I'm sure that's the case.
No,
but
definitely.
Sometimes if they can really demonstrate the value as well. So we always advise, if you've just finished a project with somebody and it's gone really well, then to...
Yeah, I think generally, if you're thinking about problem-related content, that can work really nicely. So if you're really stuck thinking, what should I write about, where should I begin? Think about the problems your clients have, because that's what you're there for. You're there to sort of do the things that they can't do or they don't want to do. So rather than kind of creating your content around how great you are or how great your service is or how, kind of self-promoting stuff, think about what's going to be really useful to your reader. So for example, if you've just started doing probate or something like that, rather than talking about how wonderful your service is, think about the kind of wider topics around that might be useful to someone who's dealing with that.
We talked a little bit earlier about storytelling. Everybody loves a story. Everybody loves a story with a good, happy ending. So I think it's a case of, thinking about, okay, where was this person when I started working with them? It might be that they're a new business, they have no idea what they're doing, they're struggling they're working all weekend because they're doing their books, they haven't got a chance to hang out in the garden with their children. But by you helping them and making them more efficient, they might have their weekends back, they might not need to spend all that time doing the paperwork. That's a really nice story to tell.
Really,
so again, going back to those testimonials, it doesn't have to be kind of war and peace, but just put something on your website that says, this person, this is what we've helped them do in order to achieve.
Yeah, and it's so much stronger if someone else is saying that as well.
Definitely.
I can tell you that I'm great, but if everyone else is telling you, then that's definitely builds the trust more. Okay, so we've talked about the visuals, we've talked about the pages, we've got a great website, haven't we, Harry? But we need to get people there. How can you get more visitors?
We need the SEO.
We need the SEO guy.
The SEO
Talking of jargon.
Talking of jargon.
Yeah, so SEO, I think it's one of those things that companies usually gulp at because it's quite a vast and somewhat nebulous subject for people that don't do it day in, day out. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it's all about making your website visible. I like to think of it kind of, if anyone was listening that was at the conference yesterday at Practice Excellence and listened to my talk, I'm going to bring up the car analogy again.
Oh, good. You all enjoyed that.
So I kind of think of like SEO, it's kind of got a two-pronged approach, and where like a car has got wheels and it's got its engine, which helps it drive its, gets the car going in the direction that it needs to go. Website's kind of like a similar thing from an SEO perspective, where you've kind of got content that helps kind of drive the website, and the SEO, which more inform the mechanics of it. So kind of similar to a car with an engine without wheels, it's not going to go anywhere. And similarly with wheels and no engine, it's still not going to go anywhere. And without both, it's just stuck, and no one's really going to know it's there unless they're told that it's there.
Okay.
So from where I'm coming with that from an SEO perspective, SEO and content kind of go hand in hand. You need content that people are searching for and they're going to find online, but you also need the SEO to optimize that content. And it needs to be also quite sort of a consistent effort, because Google is always changing rules. I mean, even next year, so many people now are using mobile phones to find things, and Google's found that 94% of people search for things on their phone, particularly local businesses. I mean, even 77% of that are people searching at home or a workplace where desktops are actually there.
That's quite an incredible stat, isn't it?
That is quite an incredible stat. I mean, even across our own websites where we've done research, we found that, accountants are slightly behind that statistic. It's about 19% of people are using, getting to their website through a mobile. But that's still a 100% increase from the year before, and that's looking at September last year to this year, and then 2015 to 16. So because of that, Google's then changing the rules next year, where it's actually bringing in its own sort of mobile-only index, which are kind of mobile-focused results. So it's always changing its rules, and SEO is it always needs to happen. And essentially, there's more than 30 trillion pages in Google. And more than 4 billion searches a day are happening in Google, and it kind of has to ask Google has to ask itself kind of about 200 different questions before it kind of determines what result to show for a search. So from a website perspective, you're always kind of looking at what technical elements you can help that website rank for, but also the kind of keywords that are being used in there as well. And keywords are really important because it's all about what are people searching for and what can your website be found for what people are interested in.
There are online tools, aren't there, that can help you like plan out your keyword research?
Yeah, no, definitely. So so some of the free tools are probably the ones that you probably want to use. There are some that you can pay for that go a bit more in depth. But generally speaking, the Google AdWords Planner and the Keyword Planner is a really good tool just because that gives you a kind of a sense on the search volume that people are looking for certain things. But that tends to be quite focused at broader search terms. So what you can also then do is use a tool called Uber Suggest, which is a great tool, and I really enjoy using that one because you can put in a really simple search term and essentially it gives you hundreds and hundreds of different ideas of full searches that people are looking for. So that's a really great tool that you can use in conjunction with the Keyword Planner. And then another one would probably be Answer the Public, which is always a fun one because you can put in a keyword in that tool and it can tell you loads of different questions that people are searching for around that keyword on the internet. So it gives you a really, really good idea and baseline that you can work from to kind of put in your content. Obviously, Alice was saying using natural language. You always want to try and use language that people are searching for. So it's always about trying to find what are the best keywords and topics that you can put in that content to help that content rank, essentially.
So content and SEO really go hand in hand. So I think we should probably open the next bit up to the panel. How do you make your content SEO friendly?
So SEO friendly, I kind of tend to look at that from more of a technical perspective. So we're looking at things like whether or not the headings in the article are optimised correctly. Anyone that uses kind of WYSIWYG editors or things in their website to write blog articles and things usually find that they have kind of heading options of like a headings 1 or a 2 or a 3, etc. And essentially what they do is they help determine the importance of keywords within that article, and you'd normally have like the main keyword or phrase or topic that you want to rank for within that first header article, the headings 1 sort of section. That's kind of like the main title that it kind of wraps your whole article around that topic.
See, I always just thought that was to make it look better. I didn't actually realise that had any like technical,
and then you've kind of got all the other subheaders. So you've got obviously the headings 2 and 3, etc., which are all basically aimed at sort of subcategories and subheadings that you can then put other variants and kind of semantical keywords in there that are similar to what you want to rank for. Google's a lot different now. For when it first started ranking things for keywords, it would always just look at which keyword resonated the most in this article that someone's searching for. But now it's really focused around the intent of the user and what is that person searching for? What's the entire search query that someone's looking for? Are they asking a question? Are they looking to buy something? Are they simply just looking for some more information? And that's what it kind of focuses on. So you can actually put loads of different variations of different types of topics and relatable keywords within an article to help it rank more, rather than simply repeating the same keyword, which worryingly is a lot of people still think they need to do today. So
I tend to go the other way around with the keywords because I'm so kind of content focused. I tend to have the idea of who I'm writing for, and I will write the piece first and then I go back and then have a look at the keywords, and it's quite good, especially with the really niche stuff. You do tend to cover off lots of the keywords naturally now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I've tried to do it the other way around in the past, and I just find I get so hung up like, I've got to get this one in and I want to get this one in, and it just really ruins the fun of writing and also the flow of it. So I think I'd say from a content perspective, don't be too worried about the keywords because you're probably getting them in naturally anyway, and then you can check afterwards.
This is that kind of like awful like old school approach to SEO when you would read something and it'd be like, hi, we're accountants in Bristol, we do the accounts in Bristol, we love Bristol, and it's just so awful, isn't it?
It's things like that Google can even look for now and start suggesting that it's fairly spammy if you're just
very spammy
keyword stuffing things, and it just looks horrible. But I think I would actually agree with what Alice is saying in the sense that when you are writing an article, Google's getting so smart now to kind of think as a user, and the artificial intelligence that it uses is just incredible. And it learns more and more and more, and it's kind of moving away from just including a specific keyword within articles. It's now more about what's the natural language that people are using, which, as Alice said, you tend to write anyway when you've got articles. It's just I mainly look at more of the technical optimization of things just to make sure that can be found. and whether or not that's including sort of links in the article to other articles that you've done that are quite similar, or other pages on your website that are similar, and even to looking through, this is going to get quite technical now, but looking at like
Brace yourselves.
what's called like the alt text behind images. If anyone's added an image into their website, they normally have some fields that they can fill in alongside it, and one of that is the alt text. And essentially what that is, it's kind of like a description of the image, and Google can't see images, so it kind of relies almost on that description and also the text around it in the article to figure out what that image is about.
Harry tells me off all the time for not putting those in.
You've got to remember your alt text, Gemma. And then another point of that is what's called the metadata. So this is kind of the text behind the page, and more to do with the coding. But it's also quite easily editable from anyone that kind of goes in and writes articles, particularly if you're using WordPress. As kind of a platform for your website, there's always kind of a section in there that you can add in what's called the metadata. And essentially what this is, it's the stuff that you see in Google when you type in a search. It's the blue links and the black text that kind of forms of the page title and the description. And Google looks at that not necessarily as a ranking factor per se, but it looks at that to help determine what the page is about.
Okay.
But where it kind of does indirectly impact ranking is that if you've got maybe, it's kind of like the selling pitch for your page. So if you're not selling that page effectively and someone clicks through onto that page and actually what they've landed on isn't anything that they've just read in the Google results, they might just leave the website straight away, which doesn't really look great, and it reflects really poorly in the user engagement, which does impact ranking a bit more. So that metadata is still really important to try and get right and to really craft like the optimal page title and description, and obviously including a call to action in there as well, trying to prompt people to either click through to your page, or there was one that I was looking at the other day that even just had a phone number within the description straight away saying to speak to, it was lawyers that I was looking at the time, and it was prompting them to call that firm without even having to click through into the website. So, just little things like that you can craft to really kind of help enhance the optimization of your pages. And
another way to kind of drive people to your website is social media, isn't it? And there's big questions, and we hear a lot. Should accountants even bother with having social media? Julia, what do you think?
Absolutely, they should. I think, again, if we talk back to kind of, the world is changing. Social media is such an integral part of the way people communicate that, yes, it's absolutely imperative that we do embrace that technology and the changes. And I know we talk quite a lot about the march of the millennials, so kind of like the younger generation and them using Facebook or tweeting or whatever. I think that historically it's been very much used as kind of a networking platform for people to know who other people are, and to even down to, we laugh a lot about people putting up their dinner and wanting to know things like that. But I think it's really important to think that social media is free. It's a gateway to your clients, and everybody uses it. So, for example, there's kind of 2 billion people out there that are using social media. That's a massive amount of people. That's a huge amount of reach. And we talked about online presence earlier, and people are competing, trying to be that differentiator. But just going back to social, I think there's kind of certain things that you should be doing as an accountant, and because there are so many different platforms, it's about stopping and thinking about, okay, which one is going to work for me? For example, if you looked at a company on Facebook and they had 10,000 followers, you'd think, wow, this company is somebody that I need to follow against somebody that has kind of 100 followers. And I'm not saying that every accountant can go out there and get 10,000 followers, because no, that probably isn't the case. However, it's thinking about, okay, me as an accountant practice, what's the message I want to get to my clients, and what is the right channel to do that?
So how would you get started then?
I think it's about picking one, and just wholeheartedly embracing that and testing, is it going to work with my clients? What I wouldn't recommend is saying, okay, this week I'm going to look at Facebook, at Twitter, at LinkedIn. I'm going to put loads of content on all of them, and I'm just going to see which one works the best. That's probably not the right way to do it, and we'll talk a little bit in a while about analysing the kind of data on that. I'd say pick one. And if we're talking now for one example, I'd say Twitter is a great one. More and more people are using Twitter, and the good thing about Twitter is that you don't have to create reels and reels of extensive content. They're really short, they're really sharp and snappy pieces of information that can actually drive people through to your website, or actually make them do something you want to do. I'd say to start with, Exactly that. Choose one. A second thing I would say is sign up to Google Alerts. For those of you that haven't heard of Google Alerts, this is a platform where you can literally type in a word or a sentence, and every day it will drop content into your inbox around that specific subject. What you then can look at is, okay, is this something that's trending in the industry? Is this something that I need to put on my social platform in order for people to engage with me? So if you think back to the Making Tax Digital example we talked about earlier, it could be, if you want to be seen as an accountant practice that is embracing the cloud, that is ready for making tax digital, you can tweet about that. But what you can also do is link that tweet back through to your website so that it links to a bit of thought leadership content. Yeah. And therefore you've got a really nice integrated marketing campaign which shows you as being a thought leader in a specific space. So it isn't necessarily about having somebody work on it full time and, you know, putting content everywhere. It's about making sure you do it regularly. So if you do it, I don't know, you choose one person in the office to put something on Twitter twice a week. What that will do is it will make people know that you're kind of, you know, you're interested in a certain subject and actually that you're a leader in it. Another thing I would say is that when we talk about people buying people, if you follow someone, more than likely they're going to follow you back. And I don't mean literally you're going to follow that person down the street, but on an online...
stalking.
No, not stalking, but on an online presence. People are nosy. People want to know what other people are talking about. So the more people in your industry that you can follow, the more insights you'll get to what it is they're talking about. And then you can therefore share that content on your own social media presence.
And I just think it's very important, like, to make sure you've got a profile picture. Just set up that profile in the correct way.
Absolutely.
Because no one wants to talk to an egg, do
No.
they? Which is the standard image.
I think on that as well, like as Julie was saying, making sure that it is just consistent, and it's not that you're doing it all the time and you don't really give it overkill. It's just making sure that, you know, if you're posting content that's even going on your own website and people are thinking, God, I need to post content on my website every day just to keep up with social stuff. You know, it's not always about posting content on your own website, and as Julie was saying, you know, retweeting other things is just as effective. But as long as you're just doing it so consistent, it's more of just a regular effort that people know that they can go back to your website at this time and they can find some content on there, or just going back to the social channel and knowing that you post roughly, you know, maybe once a month at the end of every month or something, that it's just something that you can keep referring people back to.
And I think it's about being creative as well. So one thing that we probably wouldn't recommend doing, if you've got an accountant's practice and you've got, 15 people that work within that team, you've got a bit of content that you want to go out, don't get all 15 people within your team to put it out on social every day, because what that just shows to people, if there's somebody in there following all 15 of those people, there's no I can't say the word, it's not, you're not being authentic. So it's about making sure that you've got your social plan, that this month we're going to talk about this month we're going to talk about that. But then again, going back to the content piece, if there's something that pops up and you think, okay, we need to be seen as a thought leader, or we need to be seen ahead of the game about this, again, just make sure you put it into your content plan.
Yeah, we like to follow a bit of a 6-3-1 rule with
Yes.
this stuff. So it's quite hard to come up with loads and loads and loads of content. And like Carrie said, you don't want to be making a rod for your own back and having to create content just so you've got something for your social media channels. If you find yourself doing that, it's time to stop, I think. So we say if sort of 6 out of 10 of your tweets, if that's sharing other people's stuff, and that's stuff like the thought leadership stuff in the industry, that's great because it shows you're not having to do it. Someone else has already written about it. They've probably written about it better than you. You know, if you've got that perfect piece of content out there, just point other people in the direction of it because it's useful for them. And that kind of stuff really helps embed you in the industry as well, and helps you with that kind of thought leadership pieces as well. Our kind of 3 element of the 10 tweets is useful bits of content you've created yourself. So that could be like your blogs or anything, or videos, anything you've made yourself. And then 1 out of 10 we'd say would be the more salesy, marketingy message.
The shameless self-promotion.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and just kind of off the back of that, when we talk earlier about kind of brand and your website, The reason people have a website is to increase their brand, and ultimately that's about increasing client loyalty, but it's also about getting new clients. So content and social are really crucial in the fact that you can direct people back to your website. And actually one of the big things that we use at QuickBooks is having calls to action on there. So for example, if you've put a piece of content up on your website and you want people to engage and you want to have a deeper conversation with them, capture their data at that point. So if it's kind of find out more, then just get them to fill in their details, so then you can call them, you can contact them, have a deeper conversation with them, and that just, again, it just puts you ahead of other practices by saying, we know you're interested in this, how can I support you? And it's going back to those pain points. You know, if somebody's got a problem, they look online, what's the solution? If you're that solution, that's almost going to increase that client to say, do you know what, I want to work with that company, and I trust in the fact that they're going to give me the right answer at the right time.
And in one of the firms that was talking yesterday at the Practice Excellence conference, you know, we've talked about social media helping, you know, win and retain business, but we often hear that recruitment's a challenge that the accountancy profession are facing at the moment. And one of the firms up there was saying that through promoting a job online, a vacancy, someone who's been following them from ages, really getting an insight into what the firm was, saw that there was a job going, applied for it, and she's happily working there now. So it is a really important tool to have in your armoury, I think.
I definitely agree, yeah. And I think also it's not just about posting business stuff on there as well. I think it's nice to be able to show kind of the values that you've got as well, like even if it's just posting a don't know, a group photo at a Christmas party or something of the workplace. I quite like it when companies do that, because it actually makes you feel that there are actually people that work there and it's not just something that's being automated all the time.
Yeah.
So
any charity work you might be doing, anyone you're supporting. Okay, so I don't want to be stereotypical about the audience, but we're moving on to the numbers side of marketing now, measuring it, seeing how well it's performing, because it's all well and good, isn't it, having a plan, but you need to be able to monitor it and see how effective it is. Harry, I'm going to turn to you, I think, to start off with this. What kind of advice have you got for people looking?
I'm a search guy, I do SEO, so I love Google Analytics. So that's the first thing I would probably say you need, because it's a completely free tool, and I just think that any website that doesn't have it, what are you doing? I hope that you've got something else. But yeah, so Google Analytics I think is really important because it just gives you a really, really good basic visual of everything that's happening on your website. But I think before you even get that far, you kind of need to identify what your goal is and what you are looking to kind of measure. Yeah. I think there's so many things that people kind of just go straight into doing something without measuring, you know, the success it might have, you know, whether that be through, you know, an external, you know, marketing campaign somewhere, without properly trying to find out what it is you're trying to get from that campaign. So, you know, if it's something even like, you know, lead generation or brand awareness, or, you know, even just something like a conversion rate across the whole website, or even more specific on a certain page, things like that, I think is really important to have that sort of kind of defined business goal, and then kind of try and identify the metrics to help measure that.
Yeah.
So
you've got some examples of some metrics that
So I think I'll start off by saying one of my pet hates are vanity metrics.
Oh yes.
I'll roll up my sleeves while I talk about vanity metrics for a second. Of, you know, how someone that's just interested because they've got X amount of visitors on the site for, you know, over on a Friday, and it's like, great, now what? You know, what
so
next?
What?
Yeah. Or, oh, you know, our bounce rate's 30%. I was like, yeah, okay, great. Well, you know, has anyone contacted you, or, you know, what's like what? So I think it's really, really important to actually look at loads of different metrics together, and, you know, assess, you know, are people clicking through to my website, and then are they actually engaging with the content? So are they staying on the site? Are they spending a lot of time looking at different pages? And then after that, are they actually doing like an action? Are they downloading maybe some content that we've got on there? Yeah. Are they signing up for a newsletter? Are they actually physically contacting us? Are they emailing us? What is it that they're doing? And then when actually people are, I think when you then try and identify where that traffic's come from, what a lot of the time you tend to do is kind of look straight at where's the traffic, where have the visitors come from, not where the leads have come from. So from a lead generation perspective, I think that if you look more wholly at where have all of our website visitors come from, and you think, oh, well, they've come from social media, we need to be doing more stuff on social media, but actually they're not completing the goal that you're tracking. You might find that you're kind of wasting your effort a bit more in social, where it could actually be, you know, minimised a bit more, still be doing it, but then maybe spend it in another area somewhere. But if you find that actually all of the leads from your website have come from email, and actually you're not doing a lot in email, you might think, oh, we need to do a bit more in email because that's where all our leads are coming from. So it's kind of looking at all those different types of journeys and different metrics that sort of happen during that journey, to kind of identify what success looks like. Even if you've got maybe a particular article and you think, oh my God, 80% of people have left this article and they've not done anything. But actually, when you're looking at bounce rate and time on the page in Google Analytics, for anyone that's listening that's au fait with Google Analytics, they might have actually spent 5 minutes on that page reading it, and actually, that might be good because that might have actually, that's all they've probably come to that page to do, is just to read what it says, and actually they might come back later. But then what that really high 80% bounce rate's telling you is that actually you might need to add sort of a call to action in there, or maybe a link to another page, or another relevant blog or something that you've written that kind of maybe takes them on that next step, to kind of try and bringing that bounce rate down a bit more whilst trying to keep the time on the site high. So it's kind of comparing and contrasting all of those different things. I absolutely love data, and some people think that so much data is good or is a bad thing because of these vanity metrics. But I think if you're measuring the data effectively and logically, I think so much data can be really useful.
Harry has made me obsessed with metrics and measuring things. And I think what that leads on to quite nicely is that once you've got some measurements, you could do a bit of experimentation as well. As you were talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's about, it's a minefield. There's a lot of data out there, and it's like you have to take a step back and think, okay, what is the objective of what I'm doing? For example, if I've got a piece of marketing, whether it be an online blog or, I want to change the picture on my website, what ultimately is the goal of you having that piece of content on your website? Is it just that you want people to look at your website from a branding perspective, and you could say, okay, if I get 200 visitors to my page, that is a success? Or is it that, exactly what you were just saying a minute ago, if you've got an article and you want to talk to 100 people about it, it's about, okay, let's work out how do we capture that customer data. So it could be you have a call to action on there for more information, click here, or just for a request a callback or something like that. So it's looking at, okay, what is specifically the objective for this piece of marketing, and how do I measure that as a success metric?
Definitely. And I think when it's like you said, when it comes on to testing, I think so many times it can happen where you just go ahead and test something just randomly, and you're thinking like, oh, this might happen if we do this instead, which I completely think is a great idea. Test it. I would never say don't test anything. But I'm always up for testing, but make it like an educated test. Yes. So, when we were on the way to the conference yesterday on the tube, and we were sort of saying, we made that joke that, oh, we're going the right way, and we were kind of thinking, oh, let's do a test and see which different line can one of us get to see if we can get to the place first. And
I think Harry's just trying to bring up that he was right.
So I think you need an educated guess. You need to see kind of what are you going to look at to measure, and how are you going to measure it before you actually do a test. And you kind of need to think if something is worth testing. If maybe you are like you said, converting and gaining leads a bit more in a marketing campaign that actually you're not really putting that much attention in. And you might think, well, if we spent a bit more time doing this kind of marketing activity on social media, and maybe using Twitter more than Facebook or Facebook more than Twitter, just for a couple of months, just to see if we get more leads from that kind of activity, I think that'd be far more effective than saying, oh, let's just do more on Facebook and see what happens. You kind of need a way that you can measure it.
And that fits in with what you were talking about earlier with the content and being agile on it, and being able to just kind of move things around. Just because you've put your plan in place, in January, if it's not working, just stop doing it.
Just do something different. And again, I think social is a great kind of platform for that, because you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of time writing content. I mean, there'd be nothing worse than kind of writing, a 10,000 page document and then having no one read it. So social, you can test that, and you can look at kind of impressions. So an impression is where somebody has literally just clicked on that piece of content, or awareness is where they've kind of, people will retweet things, they'll share it with other people, you get likes on it. So you can use those kind of measurements as well to see whether initially there's an engagement for whatever the topic may be. If it proves out that there is, you can then look to build a more integrated campaign and build your bigger pieces of marketing material to support that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we haven't really touched on is the kind of outside, that it's an interesting point about sort of outside the Google Analytics. There are other bits you can measure, so measuring the impact of social, but also email marketing is still a huge thing.
Huge,
so I think what's quite nice, if you can look at just some really top level measurements, so your open rate, who's actually clicking on that open and looking at your content, and then your click-through rate, so who's clicking on your bits of content within the email. Once you've kind of got those stats, you can then look at what they've done in Google Analytics and where they go next on that journey. So if you can get those two bits kind of linked up, you're starting to tell a bit of a bigger picture about what's happening with your content.
Yeah,
you could spend days, couldn't you, in all of this data? Absolute days.
You probably could, because I guess it's like I was saying, if you kind of just focus just on the email stats and you're sending out a campaign, you're thinking, oh, we're getting so many click-throughs, this is great. And then when you actually then go and look in maybe Google Analytics, because you've linked it up with Google Analytics, and you actually see that those people just left the website straight away, maybe that click-through isn't as good as what you first thought it was.
We've actually had a question that's come in. We've had two questions actually. Someone's just asked for a quick reminder about what the second option for the keyword planner was, other than the Google.
Uber Suggest is one of the ones that I mentioned, and Answer the Public if you wanted the third one. Answer the Public.
Answer the Public, okay. And another question's coming from David, and he's asked us, which of the 5 pillars do you think is most important to focus on?
Oh, controversial.
Oh, I think we're all going to say different things here.
I feel a fight coming out.
It depends which one of us you're talking to. I mean, for me personally, it's about getting your kind of brand right, going right back to basics with regard to your website and actually portraying what you want from a practice. And it's going to differ from practice to practice. What's important to one and what they want to be seen for is going to be very different from somebody else. So fundamentally, it's about stepping back and thinking about what do I personally want to be known for, and then which of the channels, I'm including you all here, which of the channels is going to be most effective for my audience.
Has anyone else got any thoughts they'd
think
like
for
to
me,
share?
I'm always going to say content, but I think it's such a broad one, because you've got just like even the little bits of words on your website, that's content, full through to video stuff. So it's really broad, but I think really it is that branding and knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, because you can have the most amazingly well-written piece of something that ticks all the boxes in terms of being sort of wonderfully well-written, or, you know, it's beautifully presented and it's got all the kind of SEO stuff. But if that's not written for the people you're writing for and that then supports your kind of business goals, there's no point.
If it's not going to make a difference, why are we writing it?
Yeah,
I might go back and say, actually,
Oh, David.
actually,
thanks.
David, I would say, how could you not have any of those 5 pillars in your marketing campaign? Because from my perspective, SEO doesn't really work without content, and if you can get people onto your website and your branding is rubbish, then that kind of completely undermines the whole point of those other 2 marketing activities. And then if you've got nothing to measure it, you don't actually know how successful your branding is. So
basically,
David,
all of
I would just say...
Sorry, David, but you need to do all 5. Okay, I think we're heading towards the end of the session now, and we've covered so much stuff. I certainly feel like I'm leaving with some particular search stuff that I need to work on. But I thought it'd be good if we all kind of pick something that we thought was the most important, the thing that perhaps people could go away and work on next week. So not the most important, but the kind of the actionable. I mean, for me, I really like the idea of just picking one social media channel, Twitter, and just going for it and just really working on it. So that for me would be something that I would encourage people to look at next week. Harry, what do you?
I would maybe just go across your website and, putting all the technical SEO kind of thing aside, just look at what do you want that page to do? What kind of keywords are you thinking of targeting in that page, and what are you expecting someone to do when they land on that page, and is that actually resonated in the copy that you've got on there?
Alice?
I would have a look at, before you start creating anything, is getting that list of what are the common questions that your clients are asking you again and again and again, because those are the problems, and that's a good place to start with writing stuff.
Julie, what's your actionable?
I think on the back of that, it's taking that step back and thinking, okay, what do I want to be known for? If it's cloud accounting, does your website say cloud accounting? I've come across so many where I've asked that question and then we've said, okay, let's look at your website. Does it show that? Oh, no, it doesn't. So it really is just back to basics and thinking about what do I want to be known for? And if somebody comes across my site, is that easily recognisable?
Great. Well, I think that has been quite a session. Thank you to the panel for joining us. It's been really, really interesting, and thank you for everyone for joining us.